Hi again, Year 6, Monday the 11th of January still. Don't know why I'm bothering reading that to you. You can read that yourself, I'm sure. So, our Walt for our English session today. We are learning to be concise in our writing. I'll come back to that in a moment and just double check that we're all happy with the word concise. What I'm looking for today is that you're able to cover all 5 of the W's in the introduction of a newspaper report, but with a maximum of 3 sentences. So getting all of the W's covered, but with only 3 sentences is an absolute maximum. My challenge to you will be to try and really get it done in 2, or potentially even 1, but that might be pushing it. To use relative pronouns accurately and clearly, and to write sentences including relative clauses. So, concise. If you're in school, you can have a quick chat with one another, obviously safely and across the tables. What do you think concise means? If you're at home, see if you can remember or work out what concise means as well. So, hopefully, you can pause the video, you can have a bit of a chat about it, you can come back to it after that, but hopefully you're now all ready. Concise then, it is described in the dictionary as an adjective, and it is to give a lot of information clearly and in a few words. Brief, but comprehensive. Now that's the important bit. It's not the same as a précis or a summary to be concise, because they leave things out. They purposely don't put all the information in. But when you're being concise, you still need to make sure you've covered all that information, that you've been comprehensive and covered everything. But you still need to try and use as few words as possible. You need to be brief, but comprehensive, exactly as it says just there. And that's what we're going to try and be today. So, with that in mind, here is a really long description of what your news story is going to be about what happened. I'd like you to have a bit of a think about it. I'm going to read it out for you, just in case your screens aren't that clear. And what I want you to do with this, when I finish reading it out, I'd like you to write down, pause and write down just the most important things from this. What from this is actually going to be needed in your newspaper report's introduction? And think about those 5 W's. What are some of the W's that we know from this? Okay, let me have a read to you. It was a fairly normal Friday evening, at least that was the way it seemed, when schoolboy Elliot left his house, that he shared with his mum, to go and explore the unusual noise that had shattered the stillness of the night. Leaving the ramshackle house and picking his path carefully across the unlit field between his house and the nearby cowshed, Elliot noticed the strange, ethereal glow that was emanating from the derelict building. Smoke tendrils crept out from the building, and a noticeable heat could already be felt as Elliot neared. Though it was nearing 10 p.m., it was easily hot enough to keep the cold of the night at bay. The building, already derelict before these events even occurred, was now completely destroyed. Wood was scattered all around. The metal structure below it was warped and mangled. Inside, a burning crater filled the space, with a terrified cow huddling at the very edge and looking entirely baffled. So, perfectly lovely bit of writing, some really good words, thoroughly enjoyed, ethereal, emanating, and tendrils. By all means, there's a bit of an extension, a bit of an added challenge. Do look up those words, see what they mean. Try and use them maybe yourself in some of your narrative writing, but it definitely feels more like a narrative. So, what are the facts there then? What are the key bits that we need? If we're being concise, what are the key bits we're going to take from that? What W's do we have that we can then use in our introduction? That's your first task, please. I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to note down only the key things that you're going to take to use in your newspaper report. When you've done that, restart the video and I'll move on and show you what I think the key bits are there. Okay, so the key bits that I think then, having looked at that and had a bit of a think, I've coloured them in orange. So I think that Friday evening, that's definitely one of our W's. That's the when of our W's. The schoolboy Elliot left his house that he shared with his mum. That's the who is involved in this story. 10 p.m., That's also when, because remember, when can be to do with location, but it can also be to do with what time. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying when. It's not location if it's when, it's where. If it's so Friday evening is where, schoolboy Elliot is who, and 10 p.m. is when. So we've got 3 of our W's already. The building completely destroyed. That's sort of our what. What is the story about? And then why? Well, the burning crater is the clue. We've not yet been told it's an asteroid, but the burning crater is the clue as to why it was destroyed. Or how, I suppose we could also say. So, they're your key things. They're the things that we're going to take for our writing. So we're going to take the Friday evening as our when. We're going to take schoolboy Elliot left his house that he shared with his mum. That's the who. The building was completely destroyed. That's the what that happened. 10 p.m. is when. And the burning crater with the asteroid hitting is the why. So they're the key things. However, if we look back at our what, we now need to think about what the task is for today. So the task is to be concise in our writing. And to be concise in our writing and achieve that what, we need to do some writing. And then our Wilf kind of gives us a clue as to what type of writing I'm going to be interested in. So I'd like you to have a go at writing some practice introduction paragraphs. And I'd like you to make sure that in that you include some sentences that have relative clauses. So let's take one of the things then that we've just talked about. Well, firstly, let's remind ourselves what those relative pronouns are, because it can't be a relative clause without a relative pronoun. And it says there, use relative pronouns accurately and clearly. So the relative pronouns are who, which, whose, whom, and that. They are the main 5 relative pronouns and the key ones to use. So if we take one of the W's then, in this case, what's actually happened, that's one W. And if we're only getting one W in one sentence, we're going to struggle to get all 5 W's in 3 sentences, which is what I've said I want to see. So we're going to need to add something in. Unfortunately, some of these relative pronouns are some of our other W's. So when we're adding in a relative clause, we can either add it on at the end. So we could replace that comma with replace that full stop with a comma and then add our relative clause after it. Or, which is actually slightly more common to see, we can do what's called an embedded clause. And that's when we have 2 commas, we separate up the sentence and we place our relative pronoun and our relative clause in the center of the sentence. And that's what I've done here. So the cowshed, comma, which, that's your relative pronoun, was owned by Elliot and his mother and housed a cow named Bessie, comma, was completely destroyed. So now in one sentence, I've got what's happened and who it happened to. If I then start playing around with it even more and adding things like fronted adverbials, on Friday evening, comma, the cowshed, comma, which was owned by Elliot and his mother and housed a cow named Bessie, comma, was completely destroyed. Suddenly I've got 3 of the 5 W's in and I've only used one sentence. So what I'd like you to do today is I'd like you to have a go using relative clauses and fronted adverbials and any other skills that you're aware of. I'd like you to have a go at writing a concise introduction to your news story. Remember, the news story is about Elliot's cowshed having been destroyed by a meteor or an asteroid. You've done lots of work on that already last week, so you should already be fairly clear on what the story is. You've also looked at newspapers. We've talked about tone. So you should now be nice and clear on exactly what this should sound like, what this should look like. And now you're practicing to make sure that paragraph, that opening paragraph, is really concise and clear. Obviously, if this is done well enough, which it should be, you've then pretty much got yourself your introduction paragraph for when you come to do your hot write. So what I'll do is I will leave on the screen again those 5 key points, and you're going to just need to work that into your opening paragraph. By all means, draft it, redraft it, tweak it, change it, edit it. That's always great to see. Is one of the Year 6 objectives, remember, to edit and improve your work. So when you've done that, just like every other piece of work, take a photo, scan it in, or type it up, send it through to me, and I'll be able to give you some feedback. But I'm looking for completed first introductory paragraphs that contain the 5 W's and use relative clauses. Best of luck, look forward to reading them, and I'll speak to you again tomorrow. But for now, goodbye.